Hello, it's been quite some time since I did a World of Tanks video. My last one was about the Panzer III-4. That was well over a year ago. I was still a fairly new player to the game and was really excited because I found a tank that I finally liked. Medium, and it's not a bad tank, but I've come a long way since then. I've actually made it up to Tier 9 on one of the German heavy lines, up to the E75 and up to the E50 on the Panther medium line. And I'm getting close to the other two Tier 9s, the 4502 and the Leopard prototype on the secondary lines. So I've played a lot of games since then. Uh, just for general information, I'm a fairly average player, 51% win rate, almost 4,000 battles. Uh, I've been doing better lately if I go look myself up a new meter, but it's hard work, and I don't platoon with other people. I'm exclusively a solo player, so this is kind of a solo player's perspective on these tank lines. So this is going to be a two-part. I plan the first part to be on the German heavy line, and the second part to be a look at the two German medium lines. So, alright, here we go. German heavy line. German steel. If you're like me, you wanted to get to the Tiger 1. Because, it's the Tiger. Everybody knows about it. It's one of the most notorious and well-known tanks of World War II. And in World of Tanks, it's a decent tank, but it's a high skill tank. Tiger 1 at Tier 7 is, okay, I'll just put it bluntly, it has shit for armor. 100 millimeters of frontal armor on the turret and the front plate, 80 at the sides, 80 at the rear, 80 on the sides of the turret. I mean, it's a giant square box that's flat with huge weak spots that are very easy to pin. What it does have is a mid-mounted turret and decent side armor. So it's actually a pretty good side scraper. If you place yourself like this and back out from a corner, you only expose a little bit of your side armor and can get your gun around to shoot a target. If it's a front mounted turret, you have to expose even more of your side, potentially even part of the front, or have to put it at such an extreme angle to keep it hidden that your side plate will eventually become pinnable. So the good thing about this tank is it has high DPM and the highest hit points of any Tier 5 heavy. 1500 hit points, or correction, Tier 7 heavy. My bad, my mistake. 1500 hit points is absurd. It's a ridiculous amount of hit points. It's a bullet sponge, essentially, or an XP pinata, depending on how you're looking at it. But it has this long 88 gun, the L71, which has almost a 9 rounds per minute rate of fire. It's absurd. Reactor reload time, 5.5 seconds, a little bit faster than that, or a little bit slower than 5.5 second reload, with good accuracy and good aim time for OK Alpha. It's a little bit behind its Russian and American counterparts. But that Alpha, if you're in a one-on-one gunfight, don't play peekaboo. You will lose. A Russian that's doing, what is it, 390 average alpha versus your 240, if you're exchanging shots 1-to-1, you will lose. He will gun you down. So instead, then you rush him essentially and gun him down before he can reply, because you can get almost 3 rounds off for every one of his. So it's a good tank. It's a high skill tank. This is not an easy tank to drive, and in general, all of the German heavy line is a high skill line. It takes a lot of practice to learn, and you will find yourself as a new player very, very frustrated. The predecessor to this is the 3601H. It's actually a really good trainer for the Tiger 1, and it's basically what the Tiger 1 should be in this game. It's the Tier 6 Tiger. It has the historical Tiger gun, the L5688, which has somewhat lackluster accuracy but decent aim time. Good enough pin. It's not great, but it's good enough for the tier, and decent alpha. So it's not a bad tank at all. It will teach you how to side scrape. 60 millimeters of whole armor on the sides at tier 6 is enough to side scrape. I've held many a choke point with this thing once I learned how to, and it's actually a pretty solid performer. If you look at the stats, 55%, not bad at all. It's right there. The Tiger 1, 55%. They perform very similarly for me across almost the same number of battles. So it's a good tank. It's a good trainer, and I've kept it around because it's a fun little tank to drive. The beast of the Tier 7 heavy line is the Tiger Porsche. It's on the alternative Porsche line of the tech tree. If you go look here, you see rather than going up the main Tiger line, instead you have all this prototype line, or the Porsche prototypes, with beginning with the 3001P medium, Tiger Porsche at Tier 7, 4502A and 4502B. And this thing's a beast. 200 millimeters of frontal armor on the hull. Nothing's punching through that at this tier. It has a tiny little weak point here, but even it is up armored. See, it has an even thicker plate over the machine gun port. And then you have your driver's hatch here, which is again a tiny target. Rather than shooting those and risking hitting the 200 millimeters, you either shoot the lower glacis, which is relatively small. Compare that to Tiger 1, which is a huge lower glacis. Tiger Porsches is actually pretty small and sloped well back. Go over the hatch. It has a huge hatch up top that's easily pinnable. Anybody can find it. It also has two weak cheeks right here. They are only 80 millimeters, the same as the rest of the side armor. So, and those are easily pinnable from the front. They're swept back at 45 degrees. You know, that's a significant amount of sloping, but 80 millimeters at 45, it's just not enough for that tier. So, if people know where to hit your weak spots, how do you protect against that and use this beastly 200 millimeters of frontal armor, and to a lesser extent the 100 on your turret? You find a piece of debris. You'll learn the maps. If you're at tier 7, you should have a pretty good idea where the good points on the maps are. You park yourself so that your lower plate is hidden, angled so that the debris lobe is large enough that this side is hidden. And if it's really a big debris lobe, you might be able to get even part of your commander's hatch hidden, or at least be able to pull back out of view so it's hidden. So angled, if you can get an angle like this, with all of this hidden, you are impenetrable. You've increased the effective thickness of that 200 millimeters. This is swept back. You can't even see it. Even back here, it's going to be an auto bounce. It's such an extreme angle. And with this partially hidden, nobody's getting through it. You can bounce shot after shot after shot with this thing. And if you decide it's time to go ahead and push somebody, you have this 200 millimeters. People will panic and just start shooting at the middle of mass. They are going to bounce right off of this thing. It's such a good tank. Yeah, I love it. It was my first tier 7 heavy tank where I really learned how to drive a heavy. What I learned driving the Tiger Porsche let me go back and really beef up my game on the Tiger 1. I still have a slightly better win rate with it, but they're pretty close. Trade-off, why would you drive the Tiger 1 versus the Tiger Porsche? This thing's slow. It weighs 62 tons with 670 horses, has a significantly lower top speed, and even slower traverse. Okay, apparently it has a faster turret traverse. Did not realize that, but the track traverse is definitely faster on the Tiger 1. Much higher top speed and a much better power to weight ratio. This thing is a slow tank. It's a slow heavy, but it plays very, very well. Next up, since we're already on the Porsche line, 4502P at tier 8. This is a glorified medium tank. It's huge. I mean, it's giant compared to the Tiger Porsche. It's big compared to even the Tiger 2. It's a little bit shorter, but it's even taller, with this huge turret. Front-mounted turret, you'll notice, rather than the Tiger 2's mid-mounted. 122 millimeters of frontal armor. That's kind of light at tier 8. That's actually just as much as you're going to find on the Panther 2. So, just for comparison. What's funny is you only weigh 57 tons compared to the Tiger 2's 71 tons. Look at that Tiger 2, 700 horsepower. You have 840. This thing is a surprisingly mobile, fast heavy for the Germans. It has good traverse speed, decent enough turret traverse, combined with a pretty good brawling gun. It's not as good of a gun as the Tiger 2's. This is that shorter 105, the L52, which lacks in penetration, but the same alpha. Lacks substantially in accuracy. This is not a sniper. but does have better aim time and a better rate of fire. This is actually a really good brawling light heavy, or a heavy medium. You can quite happily hunt down medium tanks from the other nations or your own. You know, you see a panther, go after it. You will beat him up. You can ram him, and you only weigh about 3 tons more, but you have more effective frontal armor. That beak will catch them and absorb a lot of that impact. And you have a more beastly gun that's going to do more damage. He is probably going to bounce off of you if you angle well. And you have a much better turret. It's a beast. It is a fantastic brawling medium. This is the good tier 8 medium of the tech tree. It's kind of funny. It's kind of weird. Service record, I'm honestly not sure where I am. 51%. So yeah, it's not as good of a carry tank as the Tiger 2 is. Tiger 2 is a beast. This is one of the best tier 8 tanks in the game as far as I'm concerned. It looks fantastic. It's not in high definition yet, but that should be coming here soon. It's iconic. It has a great gun. It's, you know, equivalent to a tier 9 is what they're calling it. Great penetration. Still behind on alpha. That's a pretty consistent thing with the Germans, is they're all behind on alpha into tier 9. But you have good accuracy with a good aim time. I mean, the Russian line can't compete for this accuracy or aim time at all. Americans are a lot closer, though. And you have an okay rate of fire. It's not a huge amount of rate of fire, but it's decent. You have fantastic 80mm of side armor, 150mm front plate that is ridiculously bouncy at its tier. Tier 9s can punch through it, but tier 8s are going to have difficulties, especially if you put some angle on it. Make it a little bit bouncier. Don't give too much, because you get their side armor instead, but you can angle it. Side scraping, just like the Tiger 1, works very well because this is a mid-mounted turret. So you have to expose less of your side armor as you side scrape out to get that gun onto target and take a shot. It works very well with this tank. Effective side scraping should be the mantra to any German heavy driver. Side scrape, side scrape, side scrape. Just do it. Good turret, 185mm at the front, 80 at the sides and rear. And if you've learned the techniques of driving a Tiger Porsche, those same techniques work on the Tiger 2. Get behind, cover that lower glacis, angle it. Even angling the turret, you know, if you've got part of it hidden here, it's going to be very hard for them to hit. There is this weak spot. You notice that this is only, as I recall, I think it's only 30 or 40mm thick on top here, and the commander's hatch is a weak spot as well. So you do have to watch that. I will tend to, when I'm in a fight, angle my turret as well to hide this side and expose less of this. It kind of depends on where I'm at, how I'm going to angle it. Ideally, you put your gun in the line of fire so that they're more likely to hit your gun rather than your turret. Works pretty well. Decent enough mantlet. It's a good tank. Since we're here, the Lova. This is such a controversial tank. So many new World of Tanks players, they start driving the Germans. They're going up the tech tree. Oops. And they hit tier 5 with the 3001H. Or, even worse, the DW2 at tier 4. Terrible tanks. These are not heavies, but they move like heavies. They're crappy tanks. They are not competitive whatsoever. They're garbage. Anyway, new drivers will get frustrated because those are finally the tanks where they're starting to see a real grind. And they'll whip out their credit card and buy this. Yeah, tier 8 German heavy. The problem is they don't know how to drive a German heavy yet. And this thing takes some skill. It's a super heavy. It's 90 tons with only an 800 horsepower engine. It is slow. Absurdly slow. It has fantastic side armor. 100mm of side armor is great. It is superb at side scraping. Its turret's a little far forward, but it works just fine though. But for a new player, they don't even know how to side scrape yet. You know, he's only got, let's say, 150 battles yet. He has no clue how to do that. Doesn't even know what side scraping is yet. So, frontal plate, 120mm. It is a little thin, but it is actually sloped back. That's a bad angle. Sloped back a little bit better. You see, it bulges up and back a little bit more compared to the Tiger 2. do have a large lower plate that you have to keep hidden. It's a German weak spot. It's notorious. Uh, but angled, I have bounced. I don't know how many shots off this upper front plate. People thinking they could pin it, but I angle it well, and they just get bounces right off it, especially at the more extreme side. It's a surprisingly tanky tank. The big problem, I mean, you've seen, my Tiger 2. Let's see, win rate 54%. I'm pretty consistent with my German heavies at ballpark of about 55% for most of them. 56, yeah. The Luva is the exception. Display stats: 44% win rate. I know how to drive a German heavy. I've had some great games in this thing. The problem is it is so absurdly slow. You can win your side of the map and look at the map. Let's say you won the east side. You look at the map and you see the west is fallen. Is in the act of falling. You are not fast enough to get over there and save your team. This is not a good carry tank in that regard. It is not mobile. Pretty much you pick a portion of the map you're going to go to, and you hope the rest of the team pulls it out. Because if they don't, you're probably going to be done. The other thing is, it has an even better version of the Tiger 2's gun. More penetration, more accuracy, but a much longer aim time. This thing takes a while to aim in, so you can't rush your shots. And it has a much slower rate of fire, almost a full round per minute slower. So yeah, it leads to the other problem is people try to drive this as a sniping tank, which it is a good sniper. It's got a great gun for it. But if you're a top tier heavy, if it's tier 8 match, you have an obligation as a heavy tank driver to put your armor to work. So yeah, by all means, snipe for the first couple of minutes, run as a second line tank, then roll forward and bring the fight to them. You're a heavy tank, do it. You see, I don't know how many games I've seen a Luva driver just sit at the back of the map, barely even leaving base, and sniping the entire match and not contributing in a meaningful way. It's terrible. Terrible, terrible. The Luva is a great tank. It's hard to carry in. And its stats reflect that. E75. This tank is a beast. There's no other way to cut it. This is arguably the best tier 9 heavy tank in the game. You have 252 millimeters of frontal armor, 160 millimeters on the hull, 120 at the sides and rear. And look at that angle on the rear. That butt will bounce shots. It's surprising. In fact, one of the things you have to learn how to do is if you're busy, side scraping, doing your thing against the target, and somebody sneaks around you, don't turn the tank. Leave it. Or at best, angle it more so it gets even bouncier from the rear. Then turn your turret and deal with them. Or let them bounce and hope somebody else takes care of it. The worst thing you can do is turn this tank sideways trying to get around to them, giving them a flat surface to shoot, because then you'll pin right through. I don't care how good this turret and side armor is, they will pin right through it when it's flat. This tank is the epitome of angling because it's so good at it. Again, mid-mounted turret, fantastic side armor, great frontal plate, huge lower glacis weak spot. But it's very thick and angled like this, it's over 200 millimeters. It's very bouncy. The front plate's actually equivalent to about 260 as I recall, just with the native back slope that's currently on there. You angle it, it gets ridiculously thick, up into the 300s. So, yeah, it's a good tank. The one major change is the shift of the gun. No longer you're really dealing with sniper rifles that the rest of the German heavy tree has been using. Instead, now you have a relatively low rate of fire gun with some great penetration. 246, it is so good. High alpha. This is a beastly gun, but the accuracy is way down, only 3.8. Aim time, very low. This is one of the first true brawling guns that the German tree gets. Can't really snipe effectively with this tank. You can take shots, but you're not going to be hitting weak spots. Get in there, get in somebody's face, angle, side scrape, and bully other tanks. That's what this thing's built for. And if you know how to side scrape, cover the plate, angle the turret, it's a fortress. It really is. It's a great tank. So yeah, that is essentially the German tech tree. And you see, especially once you get to the tier 7s, the Tiger Porsche, it's still my favorite tier 7 heavy tank. It is so good. Tiger 1, I drive it because it's the Tiger 1, but it's almost gimmicky because it has such a huge rate of fire and hit points, and exclusion of just being good. And the Tiger Porsche is almost as many hit points, but it's a good tank just because it's a good tank, not because of the ridiculous rate of fire buff. Aside from that, though, Tiger 2 is always fun. The Luva's gorgeous. It's in HD nowadays, and it's just a flat-out gorgeous tank. Yeah, I can recommend the German Heavy Tree. It is very hard to learn, though. It is very difficult, and the tanks are very unforgiving to new drivers. I'll be honest, if you want to learn heavy tank driving, go Russian. Unlock the KV1. It's a pretty fast grind, and the KV1 is a little ball of fun. It's, got great turret armor, good enough hull armor, and it side scrapes very well. And I personally run it with the derp gun because it's hilarious when you're top tier and you're shooting little tier 4 tanks with a 450 damage alpha, 61 pin against the side of a little tier 4. Oh, they just disappear. It's a little magic trick. It's wonderful. Anyway, if you want to learn how to drive a heavy tank, drive one of these first. You'll learn a lot more. Even maybe a T150 or KV85. They're at least satisfying because they have huge guns that really put the pain on something else. Whereas the German line does rely a lot more on sustained firepower and repeatedly hitting a target to get that DPM in. But their armor isn't as good, so you can't expose as well without taking fire that goes in and wrecks them. So it's a hard line to learn. It really is. It takes advanced skills. Once you learn them, they're great tanks. But just realize if you're going in, don't expect easy mode, especially the Tiger 1. It's when I'm on the other end of the field and I see a Tiger 1, it's a giant XP pinata filled with lovely hit points for me to just nibble away at. It's a good tank, but most Tiger drivers are not very good, and they expose too much of their tank, and they die, and then complain. The German heavy line is strong, relies on good angling, has good guns, but it's high skill. So, take it for what it will. Thank you, and hope you enjoyed this video.